I don't know that there has been a player that has as much perceived negative pressure on him as Jalen Washington. And by negative pressure, I mean kind of this thought process because of what happened with North Carolina not landing certain bigs in the portal, this desire to replace Armando Bacot, this desire to fill in the net rebounding that they had last year that Bacot provided. I think you're looking at a situation right now where there's a lot of people, whether fairly or unfairly, that feel like if Jalen Washington does not produce, then dot 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 negative consequence, negative consequence. Sherrell, I'm going to put that at your feet right now. What do you feel like Jalen Washington has to be able to do at a bare minimum for North Carolina to be at least remotely close to what they think they can and want to be this coming season?
Be the best version of himself and not try to be Armando Bacot or any post player that UNC has had in the past. Because UNC is going to be different this year. And I think we all need to start getting our collective heads around it now. It's not going to look the same. It's not going to be, drop it off in the post, pound three dribbles, and make a move. That's not his game. He knows that. UNC knows that. He said that. Opponents know that. So it's not going to be the same thing. It's going to look very different. And so, if you try to replace what Armando Bacot was, then you're not playing to your personal strengths. And if the coaching staff tries to replace what Armando Bacot did with Jalen Washington, they're not putting him in the best position to succeed. So when I say he needs to be the best version of himself, that is what are his strengths. I think Sean, from the very first time we watched him play, like whenever that was, years, decades ago, it feels like Sean was like, "Oh, he catches the ball, he faces, and his mid range is pretty much unstoppable." That's who he is. We Hubert Davis, the well traveled quote now about him being the best shooting big man in America. Well, that Syracuse game, he hit at least one three, and then Charleston Southern, he hit a couple. He's got to do that more regularly and do that consistently. And then he does have to rebound from the offensive side. He has to rebound, and he just has to be a competent defender. He's not going to be Armando Bacot on the defensive end either. So just like don't fall victim to comparison and the expectation of trying to replace somebody who was an All-American and a kind of a Carolina legend, the all-time leading rebounder in 4 years. Don't try to be that person. Just be Jalen Washington. Do what the coaching staff asks you to, and I think he'll be fine. But there hasn't been a player, to your point, Joey, in a long time where get ready for the ding, Sean, where the variance in how he plays will change North Carolina's trajectory potentially. Now they have been out in Lubin, and who knows who's going to start between those two at the center. I mean, they could even go a different way with the center position. But if Jalen Washington can be a good rebounder and he kind of fulfills some of his promise, now 2.5 years away from his injuries, then North Carolina can be a really really good team. But if he's not able to kind of take the next step, then that definitely lowers the ceiling for UNC a ton. Before we go to Sean, I'm going to ask you to this, and then I'm going to get off. How many times do you think he's played more than 15 minutes in a game in his 2 seasons at UNC?
I'd say you can count them on one
Good,
hand.
good, good question right off. 7.
I'll say three.
Three. Joey got it.
Mm.
So there were the back-to-back games when Armando and Pete Nance were hurt.
Yep.
So it's 27 minutes against Virginia. He played the next game, I think it was 16 minutes, and then he played against Charleston Southern 16 minutes. So those 3 times in his 2 seasons.
Yeah, it makes you worry about his. Well, not worry. I shouldn't frame it that way. It makes you wonder about how focused on his conditioning things have been this summer. Because I guarantee you, we're not the first people to think about that. I'm sure there's a lot of folks inside the the Deanie Smith Center, specifically around strength and conditioning, that are probably paying attention to getting him to be able to play extended minutes, including a faster tempo, which we're fairly certain is what Hubert Davis is going to want to do. All right, Sean, I gave Sherrell kind of the floor. I'm going to give you the ceiling or the roof. You tell me how high the ceiling could be for Jalen Washington. And if you want to, if you want to go BHAG with it, that's fine, or you can be realistic. But what is the ceiling for Jalen Washington this coming season?
So I think it's such an interesting case study because to Sherrell's point, he brought up the minutes per game. How many times has he played over 17 minutes? You look at the defensive side and the conditioning, and to me, the biggest concern is the agility on that defensive end of how much improvement did he make on that end. But if you're just looking at another team, or say you're an NBA team running your analytical models, he is going to pop out, and like there are going to be alarm bells ringing based on what he produced in minimal minutes last year. But from an offensive efficiency standpoint, was off the charts. He was 99th percentile in synergy. He was excellent in pretty much every category offensively. He improved his 3-point shooting, where he was a threat. And in my mind, he has, if you had to say, hey, 3 seconds left, I'm going to put somebody in one position, like I'd probably take him over anybody in the country on that mid-range face-up jump shot, in terms of what he has, even though we didn't see it as much last year. So I think there's a lot of, from a numbers side, a lot that showcases what he can do with larger minutes, but it's all going to go back to, I think the agility and conditioning standpoint. Obviously the strength is an issue, but you saw his block rate go up significantly. If you look from offensive rebounding on a per minute basis, he was pretty much the same as Armando. But I think there's still a lot of room for growth. So, I think in a best case scenario, he turns into that, what we've seen over the years, that UNC big that takes that leap from, hey, they are efficient off the bench, to now you're a bona fide starter playing, 25 minutes a game and averaging in double figures. So I think that might be a stretch, but there's a lot of number signs that showcase what he can do and how efficient he can be offensively. But it's defensively that's the concern, especially in space, and how people want to potentially maybe try to body him up or target him, as well as the decision making and processing, which was an improvement from last year. But those are the biggest factors, because once again, 99th percentile offensively in very limited possessions, but also 26th percentile defensively. So there's a big gap that needs to be solved for.
Would you say there's a variance? Is that what you would say? Sherrell, go ahead.
Ding. His per 40, again, limited sample, last year, 18 points, 12 rebounds, 2.7 blocks. So eye popping for sure. But can he make that transition into playing more minutes per game every single night? The rigors of the ACC and just the physicality that the game has and brings, with this non-conference schedule that UNC has, the travel, just add all that together. Plus, you're adding more minutes than he's played in his entire basketball career, high school, AAU, or college thus far. Like, can his body handle it, and can he produce over and over and do it again and again?
And, I don't think usage rate. Sorry, Sean. I don't think his usage rate is going to be anything near where Baycott's was. But if he can give you something like that per 40 in 28 minutes, I think UNC fans and the staff and anybody associated with this program will take that and run and do naked somersaults all the way down Manning Drive. Sean, go ahead.
The one thing in terms of using his shooting ability, I think we saw it in high school a lot, where he was utilized as a trailer. He come down, they pitch it to him, and he's spotting up and knocking in threes from that top of the key spot. And I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities for him and Cadeau in the pick and roll, but also for UNC to push, especially with that, the 1 through 4 that they're going to have. Look for early three, or leak out or attack the rim. And if it's not there, he can be coming down, and once again, you're going to have another 5 trying to guard him on the perimeter. So just another area that can be utilized offensively for him.